Hey guys, what's going on? It's Seth here, and in today's video I want to show you the 5 top bodybuilders with the best arm development and how they trained those arms, and also some tips and tricks from them on how you can maximize your gains when training arms in the gym. Number 4 on my list is going to be one of the most well-known and most successful bodybuilders of all time, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold was always known to have one of the best developed and biggest arms in the history of bodybuilding, and most importantly, one of the biggest biceps ever. Other than his chest, his arms was always one of his best features. But how did he build them? So let's look at some of the tips from Arnold on how to maximize your gains when you are training in the gym. One of the main tips that Arnold mentions in the film Pumping Iron and in most of the interviews made with the champ is that you should always really focus on the muscle that you are working. You should really be inside the muscle. So when you are in the gym and you are training hard, you should not concentrate on the people around you or anything else that's happening around you or the music that you are listening. When you are training arms or any other body part, you should really be inside the muscle. You should really focus on the muscle, how it's contracting, how it's working, how it's growing. You should really visualize what's happening to the muscle, and you should visualize what you want to achieve. Another tip from Arnold is that you should always shock the muscle. You should always provide some kind of resistance or some new technique that's going to shock the muscle, because if you are doing the same thing over and over again, then your muscle is going to adapt to it and it's not going to grow anymore. So what Arnold really recommends is to shock the muscle with forced reps, with partial reps, with negative reps, or just doing supersets, or just pretty much any training technique that you are not used to. So tip number 1 is to shock the muscle. Tip number 3 from Arnold is that during your exercises and your workout, you should always start out by using perfect form, by concentrating on the muscle and controlling the weight. But to extend the sets and increase the intensity, you should start to do cheated reps after you cannot perform any more reps with a perfect form. This way you can just provide some kind of extra intensity to your workout, and you can provide a resistance that your body is not used to. So start out by doing reps with a perfect form, but as soon as you cannot do anymore, just do a couple more forced reps or cheated reps. And lastly, tip number 4 from Arnold, and I'm sure that you have heard this if you have been watching any interviews or videos with Arnold training or speaking about training, is that you should pause after each set. So what Arnold recommends is that when you finish every single set, you should start posing in front of the mirror. You should really contract very hard the muscle that you've been working on. So if you are training arms, as soon as you finish with the set, you should step in front of a mirror and start posing very hard. This will also increase the intensity, and it's just going to give a resistance that your body is not really used to. So pose, and pose. Number 3 on my list is the most successful bodybuilder of all time, with 8 Mr. Olympia titles under his belt. Of course, I couldn't have missed him from this list. He is the big Ronnie Coleman. Ronnie Coleman had one of the best arms and best physique in the bodybuilding history, and for that reason he has been able to achieve 8 Mr. Olympia titles. Ronnie Coleman was always quite open about his workout sessions. You can find many videos on the internet about him training, and he was always quite generous with giving out tips on how to maximize your gains when you are training in the gym. Tip number 1 from Ronnie Coleman, which he mentions as one of the most important factors in order to maximize your muscle gains in the gym, is going to be to chase the pump. As Ronnie says, the perfect repetition is always going to be the one where you can achieve the best pump possible. Of course, he mentions that in his opinion, the sweet spot for the perfect repetition number is going to be in between 10 and 15. But if for you something under or over this works better to achieve a bigger pump, then that's going to work better for you. Because as Rani mentions it, the most important factor to achieve great hypertrophy and muscle gains is going to be to have the best pump possible. And for this reason, Rani advises not to go to failure all the time, because this is going to have diminishing returns in terms of your pump. So he recommends to go to failure only in a couple of sets during your workout, and to more likely focus on the contraction and high repetitions in order to achieve the best pump possible. Tip number 2 from Rani is going to be to make sure to incorporate enough supersets into your workout. These will kind of maximize the pump that you can achieve, and it's going to give a certain type of resistance that your body might not be used to, and it's a great tool to increase intensity as well during your workouts. And last but not least, tip number 4 from Rani is going to be a specific one, and it's to maximize your tricep gains. Rani says that you should use dumbbell tricep exercises to hit all 3 heads, because when you are using dumbbells, it's going to stimulate your triceps and all 3 heads of the triceps much better than just using machines. And also what Rani mentions is that you should do 2 elbows overhead tricep exercises and 2 exercises where your elbows down by your hips. Alright guys, coming up to number 2 is going to be not anyone else but the gift, Phil Heath. And it doesn't matter if you like the guy or not. It is definitely sure that he is one of the greatest bodybuilders of all time, with 7 Mr. Olympia titles under his belt. Also, Phil Heath owns one of the best set of arms in the history of bodybuilding, and now we are going to take a look at how he was training those magnificent arms. Tip number 1 from Phil Heath is to use controlled aggression during your workouts, meaning that you should feel the muscle all the way through. According to Phil, it's gonna be about the time under tension, the muscle being contracted, and just your technique. That's gonna be your biggest difference, meaning that it's not necessarily the amount of exercises, the amount of reps or certain exercises that are going to make a difference, but the way that you train, the way that you concentrate on the training. So I think that he kind of agrees with Arnold on the fact that you need to train hard and you really need to concentrate on the muscle while you are training it. Tip number 2 is to make sure that your rest periods are short, between 1 and 2 minutes. According to Phil, arms are a quite small muscle group, and your focus should be to provide enough intensity in a short period of time, really smash the muscle, and then go home and just rest. So what Phil recommends is to take only 1-2 minute rest time and really turn up the intensity. Looking at Phil's workout plans, I cannot see anything really extraordinary. According to the workout plans that I've been able to find online, he is using usually 3 to 5 sets, each exercise with 10 to 12 reps, which is just the usual type of repetition range in terms of hypertrophy training. Though it is worth mentioning that Phil used to work with HANY RAMBOD during his career, and HANY RAMBOD's main technique is FST7. I won't get into depth into this because then this video would become a very long one. But if you are interested in Phil's training technique, then just search for HANY RAMBOD and the training style of FST7. Before getting to the number 1 spot on my list, I want to take a little detour, because there is a bodybuilder that did not make my top 5 list, but I cannot leave him out from this conversation since I feel like that he has one of the best bodies of all time. He is one of my favorite bodybuilders of all time, and also he owns one of the best set of arms and one of the peakiest biceps of all time. He is not anyone else but the great Kai Green. And as looking at this picture, you can definitely see that even though he didn't make my number 5, his arms are even impressive looking at it by the side of Phil Heath, who was the number 2 on my list. Kai was always very open about his training technique and training philosophy, and I have to say that it is one of the most interesting ones. According to Kai, the best way to train arms is going to be with a rep range of 12 to 15 reps. Another important tip that I have found during looking at Kai's interviews is that he mentions the same technique that Arnold Schwarzenegger did, and this is to cheat in order to extend your sets. So Kai is saying pretty much the same thing as Arnold, that you should always use proper form and proper technique and really concentrate on the muscle, but when you can't do any more reps this way, then you should also extend your sets with some cheated or forced reps just to increase the intensity even further. In terms of specific tips or instructions, Kai says that you should always include some kind of dumbbell curls when you are training biceps, since the bicep has two functions. And if you use only barbell exercises, then you are going to be missing out on the supination. And this is one of the main functions of the biceps. So you should always include some dumbbell curls in your workouts. Another exercise that Kai mentions in order to achieve a great peaky biceps like his is going to be concentration curls. He also mentions that even though this is going to help to bring out the peak of your bicep, it's kind of still a genetic factor because it depends on the insertions of your biceps. If you are genetically gifted with a peaky biceps, then you are going to be able to build a great peak. But if your insertions are different, then you might not be able to build a peaky biceps even if you are doing these exercises. In terms of triceps, Kai recommends using dips as the best mass builder exercise, but he also says that you should always start out your tricep trainings with some kind of cable pushdown to really warm up the muscle, and you should always make sure that when you are doing cable exercises to always switch up. Basically, you should always just change up your grip. Coming up to the top of my list, the number one spot belongs to not anyone else but the beast Rolly Winkler. Rolly Winkler is one of the modern day mass monsters, and he is the one who owns one of the most impressive arms in the history of bodybuilding, if not the single most and best biceps and triceps in the history of bodybuilding. I mean, just look at those arms and mainly those triceps. It is like that tricep is having a life on its own. It is just absolutely crazy. So, how did he build these monstrous biceps and triceps? Well, what Rolly mentions is that it is absolutely important to always warm up your arms properly before you start training them hard. What he recommends for biceps is to always use 21s, and this exercise is when you are doing 7 reps only halfway up, and then you are doing 7 reps from halfway to the top, and then you are doing 7 full reps. And this will add up to 21 reps in total. This is a great exercise to warm up and just to give you a great pump altogether. Another tip from Rolly is to make sure that you use barbells and dumbbells mixed in your biceps exercise, since these will hit your biceps differently. This is just pretty much the same thing as what Kai mentioned, that you should always use barbell and dumbbell exercises too during your workout, just to make sure that some supination action is going to be in during your workouts as well. Tip number 3 from Rolly is that he's saying that it is not true what everybody says, that the best way to do bicep exercises is to keep your elbows fixed beside your hips and just keep it there the whole time. He's saying that your bicep is going to be contracted much better if you do some repetitions with your elbows fixed beside your hips, and then you let your elbows come forward and get a really good peak contraction on the biceps. Coming up to tip number 4 from Rolly, and this is going to be for triceps. What Rolly says is that the best tricep exercise that you should never skip, and as he says, no big triceps has been ever built without incorporating this exercise into your routines, and this is going to be skull crushers. He is saying though that you should always use a spotter and be safe, but altogether he mentions that this is one of the best all-around tricep exercises out there. And the last tip from Rolly is just going to be a basic one, how he says that you should always use a reverse grip push down during your tricep exercises, since this is the best exercise that's going to hit the long head and will give a great look to your triceps from the side. And lastly, I just wanted to mention that looking at Rolly's workout sessions, you can see it again that he's just using the usual 3 to 5 sets with 10 to 12 repetitions, which is just the usual way in terms of hypertrophy training, so there is nothing extraordinary here. And altogether, you can see, looking at most of these guys' workout routines, that they are using pretty much the same repetition ranges and sets and reps, but this is not going to be the main factor. The reason why these guys have such great arms is not the fact that they've been doing this many sets or this many reps or this kind of exercise or that kind of exercise. The main and most important factor is always going to be intensity, contraction, technique. The main thing that you should focus on is not exercises, sets or reps. Of course, there's a certain limit that you should keep yourself to. But altogether, the most important factor that's going to change your results in the gym is going to be intensity. So make sure to check out my other video that covers this topic in more detail. I'm going to link it up on the right hand side. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please like and tell me what you liked in it and what you would like to see in the future. Also, subscribe to my channel for more videos like this, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye.